So this next session is going to be fantastic. I think there's instructions on how to use the Wi-Fi. I have been using it throughout the day. I promise you it has worked quite a lot of the day. But the next session is really interesting because it combines two things. One of the things we talk about is tangible action and what is it that you do because you attend One Young World. And the other thing we talk about is we have this amazing group of counselors who really hugely inspire you all to go on and do some of these great things. So I'm absolutely delighted that we're going to have this session, which is a focus on two big initiatives that have happened because of One Young World. And the reason that they've happened is because of the inspiration that two of our great counselors provided. So if we could flip up the cue, please, guys.
Can we have auto cue, please?
And if everybody could hurry in. Mr Annan does have to leave quite promptly because he has another engagement.
Auto cue,
so the
please.
faster we get him on stage, the more you'll benefit from it. And if you could roll the auto cue, please, guys.
We're being summarily ignored.
But in the meantime, look at these beautiful diagrams. That's what a Wi-Fi network looks like. It is working perfectly. Actually, just one quick comment.
Roll, please. We're ahead of that. Stop.
Okay, so to introduce our two inspirational counselors, we're absolutely delighted to welcome to the stage the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, Ahmed Al-Wendawi. Ahmed. There you see. They always do this. Let's take it away, sir.
It's happened.
Wow. How are you? Good? It's a great honor to be here. Thank you so much for a fantastic event. And it's a great honor for me also to do the introduction part of this very special session. Well, I'm honored to introduce two inspirational figures, among other speakers. Let me ask you, are you inspired? Well, I'm going to ask for some homework after. Maybe everyone can write down something that you are going to do back home after this session, because you will be super inspired in this session. First man that I'll introduce is a man whose dedication to global peace, human rights, and development has been central to his career as the United Nations Secretary General for 10 years. And this also has been central to his life as a global leader, from initiating the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, to also successfully mitigating the Kenyan electoral dispute, as if you might remember. He's a true role model for the development and peace champions that we should all strive to be. This great man is one of the global leaders who have truly inspired millions to strive for becoming global citizens and working for a more peaceful and just world for all. I know he has been introduced several times in this event, but as you are meeting here now in Johannesburg, let me remind you of one of his favorite quotes. Tolerance, intercultural dialogue, and respect for diversity are more essential than ever in a world where people are becoming more and more closely interconnected. This is a reminder for all of us here today to strive for tolerance and acceptance, and to promote these values wherever we are, today and every day. This man, as you well know, his Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. Let me introduce the second inspirational leader. And as a Secretary General of the United Nations Envoy in Youth, I'm quite young myself as well. And as a matter of fact, I was born in 1984, which means I personally do not remember what was perhaps the first major global event that brought the world's attention to the plight of the development world in general and the starving people in Ethiopia at that time, Live Aid. For those of you who, like myself, are too young to remember this, Live Aid was a dual venue concert held in London in the UK and Philadelphia in the United States simultaneously. At the same time, concerts inspired by Live Aid were organized in many other places, among other countries in Australia and Germany. It's one of the largest scale satellite link-ups and television broadcasts of all times, and had an estimated global coverage of 1.9 billion. And remember, this was in 1985, when the total world population were only some 4.8 billion. Even though I was too young to watch Live Aid and be a part of this experience myself, Live Aid has always been a source of inspiration, and is definitely the role model of what effective advocacy looks like. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's a great honor and true privilege to be the one who will introduce you today to Kofi Annan and Bob Geldof.
Stay standing because you're going to want to stand up again. The next is one of our great counselors who I know you stand for, who's particularly asked to be on stage during this session. Is he there? I'm not sure he is. Mr. Ahmed Kathrada.
Fantastic. So, the first person we're going to hear from is Parker Liautaud. Parker is French, American. He's somebody who, when we first met him, I think he was 15 and he was this skinny little guy, and every year he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I will leave it to Parker to explain to you how and why he was inspired by Sir Bob Geldof. Parker, please come on.
Parker, I can see you.
Here he comes.
Next to Mr. Speak from the lectern.
The lectern.
Yes, sir. So, it's just an incredible honor to be back here. I feel so lucky. And every year I come back, I feel incredibly lucky to be part of the One Young World community. So I'd just like to spend one more second thanking Kate and David for everything they've put together here again, and also the One Young World team. And of course, our counselors here today. Thank you so much for being here. Now, I've been very lucky to visit the polar regions a number of times over the last few years. Last year was my third expedition to the geographic North Pole. Thank you, David. But instead of talking too much about my Arctic expeditions and about Arctic climate change, I'd like to just contextualize a little bit where we are on climate right now. Because on Monday, as Sir Bob Geldof pointed out last night, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, the governing body on assessing what we know about climate change, released its most recent report on the physical science basis of the issue. Now, it tells us, once again, It reinforces the certainty that humans are the dominant cause of warming in the atmosphere since the 50s. It reinforces once again this certainty, which is now for scientists about the same level of certainty that scientists have, that smoking is linked to cancer. In addition, once again, we are told that there is an immediate need for, quote, substantial and sustained reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, end quote, to address this issue. Now, this is not new. We know what's happening. We know why it's happening. We know what we need to do to address it. And if there is one thing that this report emphasizes in particular, it's that the time for procrastination and denial has run out. It's likely that this will be one of the last big warnings that we have. Because the next report is not going to say, here's what we should start to do about climate change. It's going to say, here are all the things that we have failed to stop that are now inevitable. So as a generation, we have a choice. I think we can either watch as the world continues to go on this path that cannot be sustained and inherit all of the problems that are associated with this, or we can choose to be the generation that finally breaks through on climate. But this is going to require us to take the reins. So I think that it's not really about governments or politicians or inaction, because we don't have time for that anymore. Professor Yunus last night reminded us that we are the luckiest generation in history, that more than any other generation, we have the tools and the power for effective global collaboration. And this means that whether we like it or not, the responsibility for addressing climate change falls on our shoulders. And it will require enormous resilience on our part. We will have to go to the ends of the earth to ensure the protection of future generations. We will have to be humble in learning from the experience of the generation of our counselors. But we can't wait until 2050, and we can't wait until 2030, and we can't wait until 2015 even. It has to be now. Now, 1 year ago, I was very lucky to be able to speak to the One Young World community from the summit in Pittsburgh. And I said that I would attempt to walk to the South Pole. So today I'd like to announce the Willis Resilience Expedition. 6 weeks from today, in mid-November, I will begin a 40-day Antarctic expedition which will undertake 3 new research programs, 3 new climate research programs, and then attempt to walk 400 miles from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole. I hope to plant the One Young World flag at the geographic South Pole on Christmas Day. Now, in reality, there's no way to know what we're going to run into in Antarctica. And there are, of course, many things that I am utterly terrified of. But I always felt that the most challenging part of these expeditions has been taking it from the idea to the real thing, taking it from the dream, the plan, to the action. And what I tend to do with these expeditions is not only to contribute to an understanding of the climate system, obviously a small part of the much broader scientific effort, but to change the way that we think about science, to change the way that we think about the importance of the changes that are occurring, not just in the polar regions, but all over the world, the human consequences. But then again, it's the same for any type of project, bringing it from the thoughts to the actions. Whether it's climate change, whether it's alleviating poverty, fighting the incidence of curable diseases. And there's always going to be unexpected challenges. there are always going to be times when we are strained to the very limits of what we can handle. And sometimes there are also going to be times when people are going to fight against us for reasons that we don't necessarily even know. There's going to be resistance. And I think what makes us resilient is our collective determination to just get it done. To keep going when it gets impossibly tough, when there is no clear path ahead. When I didn't make it to the North Pole on my first attempt, I was sorting through stuff in my room at home, and I found a little note that I had put in there, and I forgot to look at it during the expedition. And it was a quote from Henry Ford that my mother kept on drilling into my head. It was, "Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal." And I always take comfort in knowing that I'm incredibly lucky to be part of the generation that has more power to transform the world than anyone before us. We heard this from Professor Yunus last night, the power of imagining the future that we want. So, in conclusion, I guess I should just say that from day one, the One Young World community, the delegates, the counselors, the ambassadors, Kate, David, everyone who works for One Young World, who has helped to put this together, has been the biggest source of inspiration for me, and I think will continue to be long into the future. So for that, all I can say is an enormous thank you.
What Parker didn't point out, he's actually been to the North Pole twice, and he was actually the fastest person to do it last year. So the South Pole is about 3 times as hard as the North Pole, and we wish you every success. And when you said there was a thing that Bob said that kind of inspired you and made you believe, what was that?
Well, he's one. He knows how to win.
In particular, and this has been, the first time I met you was the first summit, the first One Young World Summit, and that was for a 15-year-old, and still today as it is. Unbelievable experience. And I think every time that I hear you speak at One Young World, the emphasis on action, the emphasis on forgetting the preconceptions, just getting it done. And as you said earlier, just recently on a past session, if it doesn't work, shout louder. And that has just been the most inspiring series of connections I've had with One Young World since the beginning. Always, I remember your speeches when I'm on the ice, when I'm in front of a 5-meter wall of ice, and I think there's just nothing I can't, And
I like being compared to a 5-yard wall of ice.
A very angry 5-meter wall of ice.
Thanks, Margaret. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I wish you could have seen earlier, last year, earlier this year, Bob's face, where I took Parker to see Bob, and Bob said to him, and what do you find really difficult on these expeditions? And Parker said he can't get out of his sleeping bag in the morning. So these are things that are really special and precious to the One Young World community, is to be able to show our great counselors the amazing things that they've inspired. And we're always saying to you, you must make sure that you do something. When you do something amazing, yes, you do get to sit on the stage with Mr Annan and Sir Bob. So next, I would like to show you a very short film about a movement that has been set up by Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, Erik and Lele Dlamini here in South Africa. And I personally am just so excited about what these 3 have done, because it is absolutely, sir, it is a textbook of the things that you keep telling our brilliant young ambassadors. So I want you to see the film, and then I'm going to ask the 3 of them up here, and they'd like to talk to you and explain to you what you're doing. And you guys just hold your breath, because this is a super thing. May we see that film, the InkuluFreeHeid film?
The death toll has been rising almost every hour. Local people say police were responsible for most of the killings. The authorities here say their countermeasures have to be firm. The police, in their heavily armoured Casper vehicles, went back into the townships this morning.
We believe that in our country there shall be no minority, there shall be no majority, there shall just be people. And those people will have the same status before the law, and they will have the same political rights before the law.
Everywhere you look, thousands of people are standing in long queues to cast their first votes.
This morning, I feel I'm just like being born, you know. I'm feeling myself a South African today.
The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The time to build is upon us. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement.
Every single person in South Africa feels that we're not on the path that we could be on. Every single person in South Africa feels that we could be doing something better, that we could be doing something that would make the world look at us and understand how democracy can work in a society as complex as ours.
More than anything, InkuluFreeHeid is a mechanism. It's a process whereby we want to better the conditions of life under democracy in modern South Africa.
For us to come together as South Africans, we need to unite behind causes that bring us together.
Through our Vote Our Voice campaign, we've seen a resurgence in young people taking responsibility.
It's our voice. Democracy always starts with an X.
Democracy starts with an X.
When young people decide that they can get together, when they decide that they want to call the powers that be to order and to account, they can actually get what it is that they want. And often what it is that they want, especially as a majority, is best for the country.
Domination, and I have fought against that domination. I have carried the idea of a democratic and free society in which all nations live together in harmony and with equal opportunity. It is an idea which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an idea for which I am prepared to die.
Hello? Oh, yes. I mean, it goes without saying, guys, that in the world today, we are at a critical juncture. I mean, we face many problems, of which I think you know. You go to America, you go to Egypt, you go to Asia, you go to Europe. We are at a crossroad. Even here in our country, we face the very same problems. Everywhere you go, you ask individuals, you ask young individuals, what is it that we must do? And they see that we are going towards the wrong direction. And this is quite a deliberate effort on our part to try and channel our country towards the right direction.
But we also know that protest is not enough, and that belief is not enough, and that we need to respond to the challenge set by Mr. Annan when he says that we need to combine business, social goals, and information to advance conditions of life and democracy in the modern world. As Professor Yunus said yesterday, what has happened in South Africa can be replicated across the world if we work together. And we agree, we can change the system if we unite for freedom.
So our councillors come here, they look us in the eye and they challenge us. And they say it's all well and good to be here. It's all well and good to speak outside. It's all well and good to network. But it's time we got something done. And we're responding to that challenge. Simultaneously as this is happening, 1,000 people are gathering at the University of Cape Town to speak about the next election and what it means to young people. And we would say to everybody at this summit that it's time not just for us to talk, but to do. And we would end by saying that what we've done in South Africa can be replicated around the world. We hope that you'll look at InkuluFreeHeid and what we're doing and how we're getting involved in our society and take that to your countries and get stuff done there. Thank you very much.
Now, I'd like Lefu and Erik and Sizwe to take a seat here. Bob, Mr. Annan, I'm sure you have questions for the guys. I do hope so. Take it away, your session. Boys?
The first thing I'd like to say is, you know, what was the first obstacle you met? Was it bewilderment? Was it derision? Was it a lack of support? Were people just laughing at you?
You know, I think when you're trying to do something different, because InkuluFreeHeid is not a political party and it's not a civil society organization. It's somewhere on the cusp between both. And when you're trying to do something different and explain to people something that they've never seen, you're met with cynicism and you're told either you're this or you're that. I haven't heard of this new thing. And having, I think, the fortitude to believe in your own ideas was something that was difficult for us at first, but I think something that we hope to continue from this point onwards.
The three of you started this together. I know we've been talking on the dialogues, and I knew where you were going, and you've really come a long way. What was the nucleus, three of you, or you started with a larger group? And how has the process moved forward, reaching out to the community and staying the cause?
The three of us are representatives of a much larger group of people who came together and said, how can we met in a small room and said, how can we do exactly what Sizwe said? How can we combine these different elements to really get us to a point where we can build an organization that, as it proceeds, helps transform the system as it moves along? And the team has grown dramatically, as Sizwe mentioned. Right now, earlier today in Cape Town, a massive gathering took place. This weekend, a massive gathering is taking place in the Eastern Cape. And the model has been very much that to say to people, this is a process and a platform that you can use to do what it is that you think is best to advance democracy, advance peace and reconciliation. And that's been, I think, one of the key elements of success, is making it clear that the process is open to evolution, and that anyone with the ability and the fortitude who wants to come forward and lead can do so.
And Lefu, are the politicians paying attention?
Oh yes, definitely, yes, they do. They are paying attention now. And I mean, there's a danger, you know, when young people like this come out and speak what they want, speak their minds. Often, politicians come on board also, but they try, and we are aware that they can use us. So we try by all means that whenever they say whatever they want to say to us, we always maintain our position that we are non-partisan. We are here for the community, society. Yes.
See, this goes to the session I think most of us were at earlier, where the women were talking about gender equality, but I focused on the Serbian delegate who was saying, what do you do when authority will not listen? When you're not a threat, she said. And my response was, be a threat. And I think this is an object lesson in exactly how to be a non-threatening threat. So the politicians come to them, and because suddenly it's numbers. Numbers are politics. 1,000 people in Cape Town talking about their agenda, it gets very sticky for them. But you don't. What they want to do is they're coming to you to co-opt you into their agenda. The difficulty is always holding on to what it is you want to achieve. And until such time as you can go to them and enforce your agenda on them, then you stick to what you're doing and keep building and keep building. This is a fantastic thing you're doing, really.
Sis, would you tell One Young World 2013 about the moment when you stood next to Mr Annan in 2010 at One Young World? What happened to you?
Sure. I'll tell two anecdotes about people on the stage. First, in 2010, I was here, one of you delegates, and Mr Annan walked past me, and I didn't know what to do. I just froze. I didn't know whether to hold him or... it was the first time in my life that I was in the presence of people who'd done things like this. And then we came back in 2011, and I remember the opening ceremony. We were sitting on the floor, no stadium, no vuvuzelas in Zurich. And Sir Geldof got up, and he said, I'm tired of talking to you guys. Do something and make it political. And I was sitting next to Parker, actually, and we looked at each other, and we thought... And that was a critical moment for me. Erik was at the summit. And, we said, it's all well and good to do these, going and painting a school, and I have nothing against that. But what we need to do in the world right now is get to the core of our political systems and the politics of our country.
Do you know I'm sure everybody knows the famous Gandhi quote, which you will encounter. It's an absolute truism. So it's first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. This man is an object lesson in that.
If I could also just say that incredible South Africans such as, Uncle Kathy, as we call him, have seen what we're doing and have embraced it, have actually come to us and said, thank you. I support what you're doing. He supported our voting campaign, and that's given us the strength to move forward, because if we have people like Kathy's support, Uncle Kathy's support, then we don't care what other politician supports us.
And you see, I've been telling you over the period that when the leaders fail to lead, to do the things that you think they should be doing, you can lead and make them follow. And this is the beginning. You've started this process. And and they will. And I think it was interesting also to hear Parker talk about the environment and the latest report which has been issued, which talks about the impact we as human beings are having on the environment. And here, as I mentioned this morning, you as individuals have power to impact our world. You have power through the choices you make, the things, the companies you support, what you buy, and the sort of energy you push for, whether it's coal-based, and organizing yourself the way you have. You can push the environment up the political agenda to a level that the politicians cannot ignore it. Either for us to get an international agreement or to begin to tackle it at the national level. The Chinese are doing it. If the Americans, if the Nigerians and others, and eventually we link up, we'll be doing something about it. But it's you guys, you people in the room as citizens who can push them to do what is right.
So do each of you have maybe one piece of advice? We have 3 of the wisest men on the planet and 4 amazing young people who are doing brilliant things already. Do you have a piece of advice for them?
First of all, I think you're on the right track, all 4 of you. You've started doing something that you believe in and wanting to make a difference. And the main thing is to be focused, have your objective, know how you're going to go about it, and do it. People talk a lot about social media. They describe what is happening in North Africa as a social media revolution. That's not the case. Exactly. You have to have the social media is a tool. In 1989 in China, the tool was fax. The government closed down and the students used the fax to send messages. You are using social media. 10 years from now, we don't know what it is. So use the tool, but have a vision of where you want to go and pursue it. And also know what has happened. You are young, but history is important. Have a sense of what has happened and what it is that you are trying to correct. Because without a sense of history, you cannot devise a real vision and move forward. So use the tools, but have an objective and have a goal. And then you're on it. So linking objective, goals, and tools are the best way to succeed.
Mr. Kathrada?
I don't want to add anything to what Mr. Annan has said, except to say that we have worked with the young people, very impressed with the way they are doing things. Unlike some other, I won't name them, some other radicals, they are going about things the way that can make an impression without resistance from the ruling people. And I'm not for a moment saying that we must pull back. You've got the South African population, and I'm talking about South Africa, the majority are young people, and in your hands lies the future. So organize in whatever you can. Our constitution is the best constitution in the world that allows you leeway to whatever you want to do within the law. Thank you.
Can I to pick up on what Sir Geldof said about challenges. I think that's an important thing that often comes up. One of the most important lessons I think that I've learned throughout this process and that we've learned is just the extent to which people are inhibited by a lack of resources, but also by a fear of stepping outside of the boundaries and outside of what society would otherwise deem acceptable. For almost 2 years, we worked extremely hard and built up the conversation. And it's only now, after all that time, that people have started saying that there is no reason to be afraid. There's also no reason why, for lack of resources, we can't meet, that we can't say to government or business, we need to sit around a table. And that equalizing factor has been one of the most, I think, incredible lessons that we've learned, just how difficult it can be to break through that glass ceiling, but just how liberating it is to watch what happens when people step over that boundary and how they then take control and then proceed to teach us lessons that we didn't even anticipate. And that's been one of the most powerful mechanisms. I think that's a key thing that I think we want to communicate here to the delegates as well, is that there's never a reason to wait. Even fear of violence or fear of reprisal is not a reason
not to activate yourself and say that these are my ideals and I want these ideas to win.
Excellent.
Bob, a concluding word from you?
I mean, you've just articulated what this man lived through. You know, you go to jail, as far as you understand, for all your life until you die, rather than succumb to the oppressor, rather live up to what you believe in. And nothing stands in the face of that. 5-mile cliffs of ice don't stand in the way of it. The icy exterior of the political despots does not stand in the way of this will and this morality. It will triumph. And what I'd say to Parker is to extend what you're doing by your solitary example, but to gather about you people precisely like this. And your rhetoric is really interesting. You talked about the conversation progressing. And that's what all of this is. That's essentially what must come out. I keep saying what must come out of this because, and why I come back here is because the potential of this grouping is phenomenal. And, you know, Kofi's very modest here. He launched with these two, and I was there at the beginning, this TikTok thing, which was an early form of climate radicalism. And it was overtaken by events as people turned on to this thing. But that's what Parker's trying to draw attention to. And he needs a sort of organizational structure like this behind his solo effort to get people talking about, seriously, I mean, it's not just me, it's him as well, talking about an existential fact of life that will face you just as you're about to have your own kids. That's not smart. So you need to get people like this who need to talk about this around you. You can lead by your example across the aisle. But again, just this constant conversation that I urged around the gender issue for the remainder of the year. Come back next year. What happened? What changed? I personally am fascinated by that. I don't expect much to change, but what they're doing is seismic. And if that can be replicated with regard to the issue we've just discussed, guys, we're on the right track. Very much so.
Final word for you, sir?
No, I think what we've heard and seen this afternoon or the last 2 days shows what we can do once we are determined and we organize. And we have on the stage something that we should all be aware of. It takes individual effort and group effort. Parker does a solo thing. The three of them come and work with a group of others to do. But we all reach out and amplify our efforts. But it also means that each one of you in this room can do something, either individually or collectively, linking up with others to move the process forward. At the beginning, you may not succeed. You may think it's very hard. But they say something this afternoon which is very important. You start without money. You start without support. People question what you're doing. But success breeds success. When they started gaining traction and being successful, quite a lot of the impediments vanished. Support came. People were asking you, what can we do to help you? What do you need? And you take off. So don't let the initial difficulties turn you off. It is part of the process. And as I said this morning, any change, any reform, any challenge is a process, not an event. You know, not an event that happens on one day. And he indicated it took you 2 years. 2.5 years. And that persistence, sustaining the effort and not being discouraged is extremely important. As some people say, the challenge really is in the journey. And they have grown through that journey, and they are here to share that with us. So start your own journeys, organize yourselves, and make a difference. Thank you
so much. Let's have a huge round of applause for everybody. Thank you. That's fantastic.
Fabulous. Thank you.